it going, everyone? So if you guys are new to the channel, you don't know, but previous years I would typically do an off-season refresh of this car, multiple videos, maybe it's like a 3 to 5 part video series that I would do in the off-season as I'm refreshing, updating, upgrading the car before the next FD season. And then over the years, it's gotten like pretty crazy where we might have like too much footage. So we're not gonna do that this year. We're just gonna tell you guys what our plan is. We're gonna do the work. We're gonna involve you with some other videos, which would be the buildup of the SC300 when we do the NAT swap on that and put a new Pro EFI ECU in there and some other cool things, fuel system. So we'll include you in that multi-part video series. But for this one, I'm just gonna run through some stuff. And first I'm gonna tell you why we do this every off season, the idea behind it, and then we're gonna go through what we're gonna do. And then you'll see this car again in a couple months. So why do we do the off-season refresh? Some things are very obvious. You wear stuff out, like the motor starts to wear out, the transmission needs a rebuild, the diff, things like that, new clutch, new filters, new pumps, like everything that you would want to check that could fail in the following year when you're at the track or you traveled a long ways and you're at the track. And why not just do it in the off season when you have time? So that's why we do that. When we upgrade things, it's during the current FD season that you're in any given year. You're going to think of things that would better the car, make it easier to work on, easier to drive, maybe it makes more power or things are more efficient. You have your checklist and sometimes you can't do everything that's on your checklist because you can't afford it. So you'll pick the things that you can do and you'll set out to do all those things. And maybe you end up not being able to do everything you wanted to do, but usually you plan it correctly, you can do it. That's kind of the evolution of the sport. I think I'm not the only one doing it. Every team should be evolving their car in the off season because it's the time when you get to upgrade and make things better. Some of the things we're not going to change so much would be the suspension, Reinhardt 3-ways, we're going to keep with those. We're going to stay the Wisefab lock kit. We're going to change the spring rate a little bit in the front of the car, which might make us have to change it in the back of the car, but we won't know till we test it. So these are just things that over the years you fine tune and make it easier to drive the car. Horsepower wise, we're gonna be relatively the same, but we're going to add a multi-stage nitrous system. So we would have the first shot to wake up the turbo, and then we're gonna have the second shot that could come in for certain tracks, like a power adder all the way through the rev range. So we will have the ability to do so coming next year. Not saying we're gonna use it at every track or even use it, but we will test it, see if we like it. Nitrous Outlet had built full custom system on the bottom of this intake manifold. You can't see it because it's underneath it, but the idea is that it has a rail. Nitrous goes in the rail and there's 2 different solenoids that can send 2 different stages of nitrous. So it's pretty cool. It's a dry shot and then the fuel will just be added via the ECU through the injectors. So that's happening. Then we're changing coil packs. You can see that these look different. I used to have spark plug wires with the coil packs underneath my dash hidden through the firewall basically. These are just a simpler design thing that we're going to use. These are a Bosch based coil and those are from Race Supply from a Norwegian team. Then also we're going to put EGTs into the system. So this is 2 of them, but an EGT just monitors the temperature of each exhaust runner. You can watch every cylinder basically individually. It's not like you can't tune it off an EGT basically. It's just to monitor if one cylinder has, let's say, an injector that's not doing what you want or it's getting too much nitrous, you'll know. But the idea of me going with direct port nitrous instead of one simple spray in the beginning was to fine tune each cylinder because I did have an issue last year with one cylinder getting more nitrous and then it caused that cylinder to fail, so I don't ever want that to happen again. So we're making those 2 changes. That is why we decided to do that. We also are upgrading, so we have multiple PDMs, so we have more outputs because we're adding in another solenoid for nitrous, and then it just was already maxed out basically last year, and sometimes it was like shutting itself going into safe mode because it had too many outputs. So we're going to prevent that by adding a second PDM, and they'll both be working at like 70%. They'll be fine. If you're looking at the engine bay, it's mostly going to be the same. You can look around, see like we're changing the color of these clamps. Are pretty cool. They used to be silver, they made some black ones, so we're gonna do that. There probably will be some other updates happening in the engine bay, small details. I like to change the details every year, so it keeps it fresh and exciting. and keeps us interested still, so that'll happen later. You guys will see that probably in February when the car is driving again. The motor and power plant will be exactly the same. That's been working good for us, makes good torque and power where we want it to be. Drivability is good, so we're gonna stick with that. We should go to the back of the car and I'll show you kind of what we're doing back there, because there's a couple changes back there. Okay, so the back of the car, there's also gonna be new wiring back here because PDMs, we're gonna have one PDM kind of control the back half stuff. The other PDM will be the front. Besides that, this radiator is new. The reason we did this new one is because we wanted these fans, and the other radiator we had was 2 inches shorter, or 1.5 inches shorter and about 1.5 inches or 2 inches thinner, and it wouldn't fit these brushless fans, so we're kind of forced to go to a bigger one. But we're also sometimes we're getting a little bit hot, and so we thought, hey, these fans and a bigger radiator, both of those will be a bonus, so we won't get as hot anymore on the second lap. It was only like certain states with like super hot climate and humidity, we'd get a little bit hot on the second lap. Before we left the line, I've already lit up engine hot on the dash, so immediately start spraying water on the radiator.
3 bottles. What I'm going to do too is try to set up the little air blower to blow air through that radiator too.
That should be taken care of now, and then back here, the rest of it's pretty much the same, but we were changing more of these fittings around. I already showed you guys that. These are the XRP clamshell. I really like fittings and plumbing, so when they come out with new stuff, I'm usually like, oh, next year during the refresh, I'm changing that, so that's what was happening. It's still like an AN6 hose, but this is called a clamshell from XRP. Okay, thought I was gonna leak more than that. When it's double O-ring sealed and then it clicks twice and it's on there for good, you can't get it off. But the cool thing about these is they pivot a little bit even when they're in their sealed position, so it's a little bit easier to work with these. They are more expensive, but only the race car gets these, so it's pretty cool. So another thing we're gonna change is fuel pumps. We're gonna use these Fuel Lab 500 LPH pumps, and these are brushless. Pretty small units, but they can flow a little bit higher pressure and more horsepower based out of that. With a little bit less amperage, you can make the same horsepower, or at the same amperage that you were running before, you can make more horsepower. So I'll be running 2 of these and then a lift pump, and then that goes with one of these little controllers. You know, you gotta control the brushless pump with one of these, so that will be a little addition that we're doing in the back of the car where the fuel pump is. Those will be cool to use because then that can probably help lower the overall amperage of the car, and these are just a little bit more efficient. So that in a nutshell is what we're going to be doing in the off season to the car. It's going to Brian at Hartsock Motorsports to get rewired for the other PDMs. Typically I was doing the wiring here with whoever's working with me. Mark had helped last year do some wiring, but it's quite time consuming and it kind of takes your whole brain away from everything else that's happening in the shop, so it's hard to like do the shop and do wiring. So we're just gonna let Brian, who focuses on that only or solely does wiring at his shop, he's gonna rewire this, and then when it comes back, we'll get it back ready to go on the track. A couple little service things we'll have to do to it, and then we'll start testing and we'll go back to the dyno. We can put a fresh motor in and start doing our testing, and we would hope that happens at the end of January, but it's probably gonna be more like second week of February. But that would still give us about a month and a half before our first round starts, so that should be plenty of time if we can go like 3-4 times to the track and test everything and make sure all the new systems are working good. Stay tuned. We'll be back on this car in a couple months and we'll share what, our progress. In the meantime, check out the SC300 videos. They're coming soon. See you later.